Here at the deep end, we're really on a journey, aren't we? We've gone through physics, metaphysics, and spirituality, and that's where I really want to kind of head today. That word spirituality, has its roots in the Latin spiritus, which basically means to soul or courage, vigor, beauty. It's this movement of breath, spirituality. It's where we try to become something new and greater than who we are. Now, traditionally, if you think about it, spirituality has referred to the mental, psychological, and religious process of reformation, reforming, to recover the true shape of who we are as human beings. And that shape is oriented on the image of God in Judeo-Christian, the Tao, Buddha, the many different ways that things work together in Hinduism into the great oneness of being. Spirituality. It's exemplified by the founders and the sacred texts of religions of the world. But the emphasis has really been about this inner dimension that happens. And it has fruits in the outer dimension. But it reflects these deepest values and meanings by which we human beings live in accord with nature, often in a context separate from organized religions. I just want to put that out there because I don't think you need religion to do spirituality. Matter of fact, you can do life without religion, but it's very difficult to do life without spirituality, although I take that back even as I say it. For many, modern spirituality basically can include the belief in the supernatural, personal growth, a quest for ultimate sacred meaning, religious experience, or an encounter with one's own inner dimension. And that's really what I want to talk about today. This inner dimension of who we are. This place where we get fed. This place where we go to exercise our defense mechanisms and seek to get past them, that we might find the true core of their existence and heal and become more of who we are. So today I want us to talk about, where do you go to get what feeds you most deeply? It's a conversation about where and how we can meet this inner dimension as a table for spiritual food, a place that reminds us, and I say giving us a new mind, of the true shape of the human being fully alive. Now, I will say that, I spent some time in the hospital. It's been a few weeks. I've been in recovery. I got a new hip. So I've had time to kind of sit back on my haunches, if you will, and just contemplate without a lot of noise around me. And I found two main inner places that I have in me that show me what is true and real. I keep thinking, how did I get to these places? How do I do that? Is it meditation? Was it psychedelics? Is it getting stoned? What is it, having kids? What's the piece? And I can't tell you that. But there is a place where everything is connected. There is a place in each of us, a vortex where my being and life and consciousness connects to it all, because we're all part of one thing. And there's something in me that calls me to that place over and over. That oneness, that vortex of wonderment that shows that we're all part of one single happening. And the second place that I go to, which is just getting quiet, but it's where time is breaking like a wind on my face. We are flying through time, and we can literally experience time at its breaking edge. It's an amazing place, and you can't define it in any way. You can create poems about it. You can call it love. You can call it, time traveling, because we're all time tripping, man. But those two places, that place where we're all connected and that place where time is breaking on the tip of my nose and I can feel myself moving through time, those places feed me in a way that I won't say makes all of life make sense, but makes the mystery not just tolerable, but delightful. And I think for me, that's the piece that I have come to find. I've quit trying to figure it out, if you will. I've quit trying to have an understanding and found myself with pockets full of understandings, like a carpenter with different tools for different tasks. So over and over, what feeds you? And that's what I want us to talk about. And basically what I want us to do is give some sample of how you, our listeners, can find a language, a way of talking about those inner places that feed you. Because part of the deep end is finding new ways to talk about these things that are as ancient as can be. But we have all these new metaphors, from computers to biochemistry to all over the place, that we can begin to frame things with. And it's been a few weeks. Bob, Marianne, Bob's coming from Florida, and Marianne's coming from Spokane Valley, Washington. I'm on the South Hill in Spokane, Washington, and my name is Red Hawk. And we've been doing this now. This is our 239th podcast. Believe that? So I'm going to start with you, Marianne. What feeds you?
A good question, and I think that you touched on a lot of things that I can completely relate to, especially going to those inner places where you're trying to find where everything is connected. And I think that for me, the mystery of what it means to be a human being, but also understanding why we're here, or trying to understand why we're here, trying to understand the meaning of suffering. And I have, I think that search and those questions that keep coming up, that I've been asking forever, that's part of my process to go into those inner places. I loved what you said when you exercise our defense mechanisms, because those questions help me to be able to identify my defense mechanisms. They help me to identify where I am not allowing life to just flow without question in my life. I had an experience when I was, when my daughter was in the hospital. There was a very, very difficult night, and she was being bombarded by the medical staff to try and perform a procedure. And one nurse tried, and then the next nurse tried, and then the next nurse tried, and then they called in the doctor, and the doctor tried. And through all of this, they had to keep sedating her. They didn't put her out, but she was kind of in this in and out fog. Mm-hmm. And finally, one of the nurses said to her, "I'm so sorry we have to do this." And she looked at them. She looked around the room at every single one of them, and she said, "It's okay. I know you're just trying to make me better." And you could have heard a pin drop in that room, where everybody realized that what they were doing was for a greater intent. But it also gave me what I connected with in that moment was the purpose of suffering, the suffering of the innocent, and the suffering of the innocent and the ripple effects that it takes out into our greater collective. And it gave me also the strength to trust myself and kick them all out of the room. And then say, you know what, if the worst happens, the worst has happened, but she's had enough, you're done. And then the next morning, after I got her rested and she got to sleep, I left the hospital to go home, tend to my boys and to take a shower and come back. But as I'm driving down the road, I had one of the absolutely most profound experiences of my entire life, where everything, I could see the connection of everything as I'm driving down the road, half asleep, right? And but it was this moment of clarity. It was a moment of connection with everything. It was a moment where I knew that everything was as it should be. And it only lasted a couple of minutes, but it has stayed with me for the rest of my life, and it carried me through so many more difficult times. And I've questioned it many times, but I can go back and touch that moment and I've tried to recreate it and I can't, but it was an amazing experience. So I think that the whole idea of the inner dimension, our inner spirituality, being open to not being told from the external religions how to be, what is important, what is truth, but really trusting ourselves that we do have access to this inner dimension that you named.
Yeah.
So,
and that's part of what we're really talking about. And that was a great, using our own experience, if you will, to remind us. And the fact is, Eliade would call that an illo tempore. That was an experience outside the normal flow of time, and one that you can access anywhere in time, which is really interesting. And I think that's the awareness of those moments and appropriating them and holding them close to your heart and sticking them under your tree and keeping them there for the rest of your life is an important piece. Bob, how about you? What feeds you, bro?
Well, it's similar to what you were saying and about having your pocket full of little truths, and certainly nothing as profound as Marianne has just described. But there's different events in my life that I feel like I have glimpsed maybe a little piece of what Marianne was just describing. But that little piece was enough to tell me that there was a lot more out there. And that's when the questions started. And I can't remember when there was a time in my life when I wasn't questioning. I was thinking, I think a couple of weeks ago before you went to the hospital, you kind of gave a preview of this week's show, and it was, you asked what experiences have you had that have really been your top spiritual experiences. I don't remember how you worded it, and I thought, and I've been thinking about it for 3 weeks now. And what I came to the conclusion was that there isn't one or even a couple that stand out for me. It's just looking at the pattern of those experiences throughout my life and those little glimpses that I got. And each time I got another glimpse, it seemed, especially at the time, that it was a more profound example of the hidden truth. And I can look back at those, and each one of them seems to reinforce the others. So that at this point in my life, I feel like everything I do is reinforcing that spiritual feeling. I can look at a tree moving in the wind, or I can look at the sun reflecting off my swimming pool, or I can watch a TV show that profoundly affects me. And all of those seem to be part of that weaving of experiences that reinforce each other and all point to the mystery that we keep questioning and that we keep getting glimpses of. And each one of those glimpses and the overall pattern is so reinforcing to me that it keeps me asking the questions.
Yeah. And, both of you have touched on some things that keep calling us back to that place inside us where Israel really is. And the word Israel means to wrestle with God, where we are wrestling with the ultimates, where we dare to face them. And, the whole word questions. Both you use that word, how it's so integral. Just the mere act of asking the question, the next question. I think that's a huge piece that is important. Because part of what I was thinking of this week is, how is it that I can get to the place where I can feel myself moving through time like wind on my nose? I mean, it's just an amazing place, and I don't know how I get there. But I know in the hospital, when I was really hurting and I couldn't get a Mariners game on their damn TV, I had to go to that place to find peace. It was as simple as that. Think about it. It was as simple as that. And once you get to that place, there's no way you can take a breath without feeling your connection if you're honest with it. And I think everything that both of you have talked about is stuff that enhances and engenders more connection. Marianne, one of the things you mentioned was that healing place when your daughter said, I know you're just trying to make me better. Wow. How do we find that place where we trust? And I mean, that's what she was doing. She was trusting. You know, every time I go into the hospital, I tell the doctors, they say, you know, the word Islam means submission. And so everybody who comes in here, you know, take off your pants, leave your dignity at the door, and submit and become Islam. And that's hard to do, to trust. And I think that that's a huge piece of that. Another thing that you said in that was suffering, the innocent suffering. I mean, that I find that over and over outside me. That dovetails with all my intentions of justice and how they contradict themselves, seem to be at cross purposes. How could this be? If there is a holy presence, what the fuck? You know, that kind of thing. So it comes back to catalog your experiences, your in illo tempores, those moments outside of time, and know that they are gifts. And they're not gifts that you just unwrap and you have. They are gifts that you keep and you unwrap over and over again.
Well, and I love, too, the idea that they build on each other, that these moments, and Bob, you talked about that, how, okay, so you get an answer, you are asking questions and you get an answer, but don't stop, because those answers create new questions. And then you go deeper and deeper and deeper, and until you can get to that place where it's everything is sacred.
And you can go back to those memories of those events and look at them through a newer perspective and get another partial answer just by thinking about what occurred 20, 30, 50 years ago.
And change your memory.
And, well, yeah. Or see a different aspect of it based upon what's happened to you between then and now.
Yeah. Well, as I'm reading this book on Robert E. Lee, let me tell you, I am so pissed at my childhood indoctrination. And I think that that's part of becoming reminded, you know, where you become, you literally are graced with a new mind. You know, metanoia is another word in Latin, which is translated poorly as repentance, but it's really recontexting so that you see things in a new context. And here's the thing. What we want to do is, you know, outside of us, family, friends, justice, truth, it's a journey, man. There's places to go to engender it and make it grow. But finding a language inside us, this is the journey of consciousness. We've talked about being, getting complex at all. You can go and listen to our physics and metaphysics, becoming life, and life becoming complex enough to become conscious of itself. Here we are. We can close our eyes or not, and there is a whole internal universe at play. And that internal universe, although you might think it's just you, is not. You might be experiencing a certain idiosyncratic expression of it. But Bob, you said it earlier, there's a pattern. You know, if you listen to what John in his gospel was saying with Logos, there is a primary pattern that equals life, love, and the whole thing working. And we're trying to reconnect with that pattern and become new. And that's what the spiritual journey is. It is the next breath. It is this process of becoming something that we were not before. And what I'm reading now, all this dystopian stuff, is probably more true than not. So we really need consciousness to somehow create a leap forward and finding an inner language. I mean, I talked about going to that place and, you know, debriefing your own defense mechanisms. Well, 150 years ago, we didn't know what a mental defense mechanism was. This is all new language. Terms of programming ourselves. Computer language is all over the place. You see, we're finding ways to talk about what's going on inside, even if it's analogic. And that is what's most important to me, to create a language within us that we can sort out the different forces that are playing on us. And we can express who we truly are and not something at the, in the name of those forces, which I might suggest some of them are quite dark.
Well, yeah, the whole idea of of course, my ears picked up when you just said that, those forces that play upon us, and what are those forces? But I guess that's a whole nother show, right?
But just for our listeners' sake, if you really want to know what they are, go to Hindu and all the gods. Go to the Greek and the Roman understanding of the gods. Those are the forces. They were identifying these forces in us that somehow overwhelmed us at some time and trying to create some meaning out of them and a context for us to live within them. That's a little sidebar, Mary. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah,
no, that's great.
Jung's archetypes are another way to look at those forces.
And it's like we're the conductors in this 3-ring circus, with all of this stuff going on, and how do we navigate all of that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had a little interesting kind of internal reevaluation experience just the other day when I looked. Someone posted a picture of the known universe with the distribution of galaxies throughout the universe. And they've mapped them out. And it looks very, very much like the mapping of the neurons in your brain, the interconnectivity. And I mean, you can put the two almost on top of one another and they correspond. And I had the feeling, wow, at one point I am such a small piece of this. I mean, we're talking a billion light years wide in one picture and a nanometer in the other, but they're the same. And it gets back to that pattern. So at one point you're minute, but at the same time you're part of everything. You're part of the pattern that is universe-wide.
And if you look at the rivers from space, if you look at the root system of a plant, if you look at the branches of a plant, if you look at your brain and the nervous system as it goes down your spine, we are all the same pattern, and it's this intricate system of finer and finer nuanced realities. I mean, if you look at the way, when I read that in a rye plant, and I've used this before, in a square inch of soil under a rye plant, there are enough root hairs that if you lined them all up, they would go 6,000 miles. I mean, what the hell? It's like, how can we not celebrate the extravagance of nature and knowing that it's going on in us? And there are two sides to this. There's the celebratory side and there's the reaching, seeking side. And I think they're both very real. And there's also the grief side, which is basically, where you got it wrong. I got a huge, Robert E. Lee, I got a huge piece wrong, and I'm having to pay for it now because I'm being honest. And that's not to say he wasn't a good guy, because he was kind of an amazing human being. However, he participated. He should have been freaking hung after the war. I'm sorry, I'm getting way off.
Well, but the interesting part about that is it's not that you got it wrong, it's that we got it wrong, because you were taught that. And so where did that teaching come from? There was
Daughters of the Confederacy.
Yeah, so there's this collective, right? There's this collective thought. I just had a conversation the other day with someone about they were talking about being in business meetings and how it's so volatile right now, that especially when people bring up political views. And the comment that was made, and it's almost like we're trying to separate into these camps, but the comment that was made was, well, we all want the same thing. And it occurred to me, it was like, no, we do not all want the same thing. But how do we live together with people that want other things than what we want? And that, I think, is that's our challenge right now.
Yeah. And you know, the whole concept.
I'm sorry, I went down that rabbit hole.
No,
too.
but you know,
Yeah.
what we're trying to do here today is just intone a little bit of what feeds you. Where do you go? You know, there is a room in each of us. We are each a mansion of many rooms, but there is a center room where the ark is kept, if you will, and where each breath finds its first cause in each of us. And there is a table in that room. And I've tried to share just a little bit of the breaking edge of time and the connecting piece for me. Those are salvific. They save me in times when when things are hurting really bad and they don't make sense. I can retreat. That's a place of respite where I can be fed by what is most real and true. It's not going to make sense of it, but it's going to make peace of it. And that's a whole different thing. We're coming to the end of our time. So, Bob, I'll give it to you first. What feeds you? Final comments?
Well, the question feeds me. The never-ending question. And the feeling of elation when I get a little piece of it. And it could come from a lot of different places. From books. I've learned a lot from a lot of very, very wise people. And each time I get another little piece of it, I feel like, wow, that's really, really cool. Let's keep going with these questions. That's why I'm happy to be part of the deep end.
Amen. How about you, Marianne? Final comments on what feeds you?
You know, just part of it is this, you know, having these conversations and being able to talk about these things with others who want to contemplate these kind of things. And I think for me, it's the stories that people tell, much more than facts, because that's where we connect. We can connect through our humanity, through our stories. And there's a quote, and I know I've used it here before, but I just love it so much. And it's, wisdom tells me I am nothing, and love tells me I am everything, and between the two my life flows. And that kind of, I try to stay in that balance of between what you were talking about, Bob, being completely part of this expansive universe and being this tiny, small, little conglomeration of cells. And so where do we flow in between that? So that holds me.
Amen. And here in that place that's balanced between the hottest hot and the coldest cold, a little critter set up camp to analog the whole thing, and that's us. Now, what are we analoging? Well, that's the question, isn't it? That is the huge question. You know, who was it? I think Alexander the Great. It's one of my favorite stories. I probably told you this before. He had conquered everywhere, and he was in India. And he just had to cross the river. But he was going up and down the river, and there were these mountains and different passes. And his army came to a pass, and they were confronted by an army of monks. 1,000 monks. And Alexander said, you guys need to move to the side so my army can pass. And the head monk said, hey, no, you guys need to move to the side so my monks can pass. And Alexander said, no, you don't get it. I am the man who has conquered the world. And the lead monk said, you don't understand it. We are the people who have conquered the need to conquer the world. And Alexander quickly moved to the side and let the holy community pass. You see, there's a place where the final fight is, and it's not out there, although it sometimes might seem there. And that's where I want to go next, to the final fight. What is this place inside us, this battlefield? Is the angel on one shoulder and the devil on another? Is that true and real? What's going on? What the hell? Okay, my friends. The final fight. It's in you, it's in me, and most of all, our great-great-grandchildren will depend on what we do. Till then, God's peace, may the oneness of the Holy Presence be all over you.